Welcome back to another edition of Index Office Hours. Today is the 15th of August, and this is Index Office Hours 120. As always, I start off with the opening remarks, and today will be no different. So I will give a shout out to the latest 𝗨𝗂𝗳𝗂𝗧 episode, which is 129 with Marcus Rain, who is, I'm sure, a familiar name to many of you in the community. He is a developer success and relations person at 𝗨𝗂𝗳𝗂𝗧𝗨. He's obviously very well known in the graph ecosystem. He speaks a bit about his background in this episode. He has a physical health and fitness background, which is a very unique one. And he discusses how he transitioned from his life as a physical therapist into the world of crypto and eventually 𝗨𝗂𝗳𝗂𝗧 and the graph. And so if you're interested to hear a bit about his personal story and how he transitioned into the ecosystem, I would definitely have a listen to that episode there. And if it's not already posted in the chat, which I believe it is, thank you, Nick, I would recommend checking out. And there it is, there's the agenda. Thank you for posting, Juan. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Juan, who's going to take us into our protocol watch section. Thanks, Juan.
Thanks, 𝗨𝗂𝗂𝗧𝗂. Cool. So getting into forum governance, we have a few updates. First of all, there's the timeline aggregation protocol. I think this one is related to the topic that was discussed by Zach last week. I can't remember the name now. But anyways, it's basically a way for the gateways and the indexers to be paying queries against each other in a different way that we were doing now. I think it complements the permissionless payers GAP that Zach was talking about, but it's a separate GAP. Next up, we have 𝗨𝗂𝗲𝗂𝗧𝗂, which is replacing bonding curves with indexing fees. This is also sort of related, but not so much. It basically means to replace the existing bonding curves for curators with something new called indexing fees. To think of this in the most easy way for a human to comprehend, I would say it's basically a way for the consumers or developers to basically like figure out prices per subgraph gas, which is something new. Basically how much computation a subgraph does, and as well like how much of that computation is how much money is it gonna cost per computation, and basically indexers and consumers are gonna be able to figure out prices based on that. It's a kind of like a complete overhaul of the bonding curves into something more in line with what people wanted, it seems. It's quite a complicated topic though, and it's a lengthy GIP, so I recommend everyone take a very good look at it if you're interested in the topic. But next up, we're getting to forum research. There's before the core dev updates, there's also a small thread regarding some issue with a subgraph and enums in the subgraph. It's just basically someone asking for some help there. And then we have the core dev updates for the guild, Geo, Semiotic, GraphOps, Messari, 𝗨𝗂𝗧𝗏, Pinax, and Streaming Fast. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on those because, again, these are the core dev updates for the month, so they are pretty lengthy. But if you're interested in any of those, again, they are linked in the agenda. Next up, we have the contracts repository. There's only one PR that was updated this week, which is related to the auto transfer tools, which is basically deploying the transfer tools to mainnet and bumping to 5.1.0. This is only deploying the implementations. Then they have to be actually linked to the proxies to be able to actually work. So I think they are already deployed. They're not yet linked, which is going to happen hopefully this week. For the network subgraphs, they are not released yet for the L2 transfer tools because we're waiting on the actual rollout of the contracts. So that's pretty much it for this week on Protocol Watch. I'm going to hand it over to, I would assume, Anna now?
Yes, thank you, Juan. All right, hello everyone. Today on Repo Watch, we have a lot of changes, so I'll just go straight into it. So on execution layer clients, we have a couple new releases from Get. The first one being version 1.0 0.12.1. This is a maintenance release, and it's a recommended upgrade for all users containing security-related fixes. So it contains changes added in preparation for the Cancun hard fork. It contains some RPC server changes. So the RPC server now enforces limits on batch requests and responses. And be aware that this is a potentially breaking change. So if you do use batch requests with get and also use the Go Ethereum RPC client library, it's strongly recommended that you update the Go Ethereum RPC client library. All block creation activity is now paused while the node is syncing. And some fixes, a serious memory leak related to the database writes in snap sync is fixed in this release. Really large transactions, so over 4 kilobytes, are no longer broadcasted to peers, resolving a potential networking congestion issue. And the P2P server now properly tracks all peer Go routines. So while it is recommended to go to this update, it might be better to skip to the next one, which contains fixed regressions reported in this one. So next one, so 1.12.2 is the latest one, and it contains all of the changes we just discussed, plus some other fixes. Next, we have Avalanche, so version 1.10.8. Here, there is a new flag, so partial sync primary network flag, added to enable non-validators to optionally sync only to the P chain on the primary network, and a few other P chain related updates. Beware that this update changes the local network genesis, so this version will not be able to join local networks with prior versions. The indexing runs in the background and does not impact restart time for this version. Moving on to Arbitrum Nitro, here we have release 2.1.0 beta 10, and this resolves chain owners list in the Arbitrum OS version 11 upgrade. It updates L1 pricing parameters to more accurate values in Arbitrum OS version 11. It adds disable L1 charging option to ETH call, and it adds get L1 reward rate and get L1 reward recipient methods to Arbitrum gas info. Moving on to consensus layer clients. Here we actually don't have any new releases, but the most exciting releases this week come from GraphStack. So we have had a new release candidate release from GraphNode. So this is 0.32.0 release candidate 0. And this here deterministically failed subgraphs now return valid POIs for subsequent blocks after the block at which it failed. This is a big one. Then other fixes, so fixed public proof of indexing, returning the error null value resolved for non-null field proof of indexing when fetching POIs for blocks that are not in the cache. Fixed an issue where block stream would fail when switching back to an RPC-based block ingester from a Firehose ingester. And Firehose connection test now retries for 30 seconds before setting the provider status to broken. There's also a couple new options to GraphNode, so pause, restart, and resume. So instead of reassigning to a non-existent node, these commands can now be paused for pausing, restarting, and resuming subgraphs. Beware with this candidate. This is the first with this release. This is the first release candidate of the upcoming 0.32.0, and this is intended for testnet use only. Then we also have a new release at Indexer, Service, and Agent. So this is release 0.20.18. Again, a really big one. This adds the capacity for the agent to interact with multiple protocol networks by running a single instance of the indexer agent program. So to enable multi-network node, you can do that by using the environment variable indexer agent multi-network mode true. And in this mode, each protocol network is represented by one YAML file under the same directory, which can be declared with the CLI network specification directory. Important to know here, the path network endpoint exposed by the agent now requires an additional path segment to disambiguate which protocol network it should target. Before moving on to subgraph radio, I'd be interested to hear if anyone has tried either the new graph node or the indexer service and agent releases. Please let us know in the chat. On subgraph radio, we have a new release, 0.1.3. This is a small release that includes off-chain request trigger, indexer management client, plus other health checks. While I see people typing, on the graph orchestration tooling, last week, the graph core dev update, we have released Launchpad v2 and given everyone an update on the new changes with Launchpad. And as a result of that, we will be restarting LOH, so Launchpad office hours, with a bi-weekly cadence starting this Wednesday at 5 p.m. UTC. So please come get latest updates of running Launchpad and bring all of your questions. And I know that Nick is working to add the LOH into the graph events. So you'll see it tomorrow. I see Matty saying, I want to get into Launchpad v2, then please come to LOH. We'll get started from there. And who is the Pain? Who is your question?
So my question is, so I know when I was testing the indexer agent releases, I was also upgrading the indexer service and it wasn't working. Apparently it has been fixed in one of the comments there that Stake Machine listed, but my question is, can we get it after the official final release, official whatever, can we get it for AutoAgora? Because I have 2 or 3 indexers that are running AutoAgora and I want to make sure that I'm running the latest versions. I'm not sure who's responsible for that.
Yeah, so if anyone here can respond to that, please let us know. Thank you. And one last reminder that we've added the blockchain operator upgrade calendar, where you can track all of the hard fork updates and scheduled maintenance for various protocols within the graph ecosystem. So please add that to your calendar if you haven't already. And that's all I had. Over to you, Abel.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I just realized that I messed up the order there, so apologies for that. So I see we have a few questions here in relation to some of the stuff that was spoken about. Does AutoAgora support multi? Okay, I will let folks continue chatting there and loop back to the previous topics that people wanted to discuss. So let's have a look. Okay, so the first one is from Chris, just talking about the L2 stuff. Is Pablo is not here. Beyond what you discussed, Juan, do you have any additional updates there in relation to this?
Sorry, for the transfer tools?
Yes.
There's basically 𝗨𝘀𝗃𝗀 and I think Ford are working on the fix. I'm not entirely sure if it's done already for the fix for the indexer agent and service. I think it's mostly for the service, not the agent. And then we're just waiting on the rollout itself. But again, I think Pablo is the one that knows more as to when the contracts are going to be linked. Given the PR for the deployment has already been merged, I would assume the implementations have been either deployed or almost deployed. And it's just going to be like a matter of time. 𝗨𝘀𝗃𝗀 says service is fixed, agent is being worked on. So I would assume like once that's done, rollout will happen. I don't want to say immediately, but within a day or two.
Got it. Awesome. And in relation to this, 𝗨𝘀𝗃𝗀 mentioned he's got some updates on L2 agent release. He's already said some stuff there, but if you want to hop off mute, 𝗨𝘀𝗃𝗀, and add anything else, feel free to.
Nope.
Alrighty. Awesome. Yes. Yeah. You just confirmed that there's no additional context there. Cool. Great. Thank you so much. All right. So let's see. Would you like to?
Sorry, but
yeah,
I think 𝗨𝘀𝗃𝗀
sure.
does have some thoughts to share.
If you're speaking now, we can't hear you. Or at least I can't.
Yeah, we got a hey earlier, but okay.
All right. Seems like there's some trouble with the audio there. Apologies for missing that. Yeah. Do you want to try push to talk? Maybe there's some issue there. Let me see if I can do anything on my end. Yeah, you should have the ability to speak without using push to talk. So I'm not sure if there's anything else I can do on my side. But I'll leave you to figure out the audio there, and hopefully you can join us again once the audio is fixed there. Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah. Oh, we heard you there for a second.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep,
Yeah,
loud and clear.
Okay. Sorry, guys. So we have fixed the indexer service. It was a compilation error that was preventing the service from even starting up. So that's fixed, and we have found a few bugs on the indexer agent, and we are working on it as we discussed it here. I am one window open on Discord and another window on my editor. We're trying out to debug some of the indexer agent stuff, mostly related to performance and transaction confirmations. This delayed a little bit on our release, and that's the reason why we didn't announce the new version. But we will probably roll out a new version soon with all the fixes for the indexer agent. Yeah, so just to clarify that we are actively working on making the indexer agent ready to go.
Wonderful. There you go. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. That's good. Thank you for the update there, 𝗨𝘀𝗃𝗀, and hopefully things go well on that side. Cool. So just scrolling back up to see some of the previous things that were mentioned as topics that we could cover. Got some fun commands on my clipboard. Okay, cool. Vince, you mentioned some commands. Would you like to elaborate more on these and how they've been useful for you?
Oh, sure. So I've just been playing around with storage a lot, and the inline downloading and stuff just saves a ton of storage, and I just found it really useful to just download. You don't have to download, then uncompress, and have double the space and all that. So if anyone wasn't aware, those commands will help you do it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. I think a lot of the magic with IOH is knowledge sharing amongst indexers. So I appreciate you sharing that. And if anyone has any specific questions, feel free to shout or write in the comments. Wonderful. Okay, let's see what we have next.
If we don't have anything next, I can ask a random question to the community.
Yeah, sure. You can ask the question while I look to see for some other stuff.
So did anyone happen to have a look at Arbitrums and its size lately? It's almost 7 terabytes. When we started it was like 2.2 terabytes. What do? Is it starting to get scary?
Yeah, I just spun up a new one with 14 terabytes because I've just been watching the growth rate.
Oh shit! Here we go again.
Yeah, there's not about like we need a solution for the long term though. We need a solution to split the archive node into multiple servers, or yeah, just buy more SSDs, I guess. I don't know. It's if it grew that big in not even a year, then I'm pretty sure that will become the biggest chain very shortly. I mean, the biggest like SSDs you can buy is like 60 terabytes. So I guess it's plenty. Or if you want Gen 4 and VMEs, that's 30. And it costs like $5,000. So yeah, it's getting pretty expensive. And yes, let's fund Eragon support. I would rather throw money at funding Eragon support rather than disks for this, honestly.
Yes.
So Matthew says there Arbitrum Firehose is not running on streaming fast infrastructure. Yeah, but that's not necessarily helping because we still need archive data. A more direct approach would be having support for Eragon, or kind of porting it to Reth or something. I don't know. Oh yeah, plus Firehose blocks will probably be heavy. You mean that EVMX that wasn't even released yet, but yet everyone brags about? Firehose blocks can go onto cheap HDDs. Yes, it can, but also your performance goes down the shit pipe if you do so. As one NVMe is faster than any HDDs you throw in an array, basically. It depends how fast you want to scale, though, I guess. Sure, but if you start multiple streams at once, then you do need random I/O. Say in a hosted service environment. Say there's no hosted service. We are 5 years from now. There's no hosted service. Everyone is pushing straight to production. And there's people throwing subgraphs. Like you get 10 new subgraphs every day. And you have to sync those. Then you do need random I/O performance. Yeah, true. Very high random I/O on large HDD arrays. That's true. But then I'd rather just buy one NVMe rather than a whole rack of hard drive. So or at least have a way. Can you actually split? Like, can you actually have history older than, I don't know, 2 years on HDDs and history newer than 2 years on NVMe? That's a question from Matthew, I think. Ooh, okay. So with 𝗨𝗲𝗲 basically, so 𝗨𝗲𝗲 seems to be the answer for everything. Like every time we open a discussion about storage, somehow 𝗨𝗲𝗲 just solves everything. Yeah, it's awesome. 𝗨𝗀𝗂𝗪𝗀. Yeah, it's awesome though. Because if you can put like recent history on NVMe and then old historical data on HDDs, then it's perfect. You can scale infinitely. 𝗨𝗲𝗲 apparently is really good at dealing with a lot of files compared to Ceph. From what I could understand from Matthew. What is Bcache, Steak Machine? Yeah, likewise, Vincent. I heard a lot of pros over Ceph. I don't know any of the cons, really. I wish we had someone from Semiotic here, because they've been also testing 𝗨𝗲𝗲s. Sure, but every test counts, depending on what they actually do. Because the only Ethereum blocks could mean also bombarding it with requests so that they can overload it. I guess, I don't know. Do we even have a tool to overload Firehose? Or like, there's a stress test tool called Flood for Ethereum, but it only works with RPCs.
Well, a good stress tool is just to load one of the Uniswap substreams. That's a good stress testing.
Yes.
It's going to max out whatever infrastructure you have.
Fair enough, yeah. So Steak Machine answered, Bcache on NVMe in front of HDDs could give you something like placing hot data on NVMe and cold data uploaded to HDD. But is that a more of an automatic setup, like literally caching, right?
Yeah, that's caching happening on the volume level, but you need very good SSD, or you'll kill your SSD in a matter of weeks.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, SSDs now got a lot cheaper though. I see 1 DPD drives with, I don't know, I think they're like a fraction of the cost of like a year ago. And only recently they shaved off, like the provider I'm looking at, they shaved off like 500 or 700 euros off of the largest NVMEs they had. So yeah. Oh yeah, rip Intel Optane. I saw Chris. There was like a video from LTT a while ago. They had like tiered storage basically. They had Optane memory and RAM as RAM sticks, and then NVMEs as a cache layer, and then SATA SSDs, and then regular hard drives later on. It was so cool, but it cost like 60 grand. Yep, all the layers.
Seems like Steak Machines asked the question if anyone has thought about using OpenStack Swift instead of Ceph Rados, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Be interesting to hear folks' opinions on that. If not, we can head back up to find some other topics that people have posted earlier. Let's see. Oh, this was kind of alluded to earlier, but I noticed that there was a core developer update from Pinax. So I'm wondering if there's some alpha that's been leaked there, and if there's potentially an announcement coming, or if if anyone from Pinax wants to comment on that. If not, we can always move on, but I'm very curious. No comment.
I mean, given how much they got involved in the ecosystem, yeah, everyone's seen that coming, or sees that coming.
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, excited to see what comes out as far as an announcement there. Cool. Let's see. Oh, to circle back on Thiago managed to give his update and get his mic working. Let's see what else we have here. Topic for later. Onboarding of base and what the index community should do to make it happen. Oh, that's a great topic idea. Nick, I think not to call on to you, but I think you had some announcements on about base a while ago. Would you like to talk a bit about that, or maybe Graph was the launch part? Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. I remember it being indexed from day one.
Yeah, I think that the broader question is how can the Graph be a launch partner? How can the Graph can announce support without the participation of the indexers in the decentralized network? So how can we? How did that happen? I mean, is it because we're still waiting for a process, or we don't consider the decentralized network to be mature enough? So what's the story here?
Oh, I see. Okay. I understand the nature of the question. Yeah, I guess to circle it back to Nick, I believe knows the most about this. I see that Chris is typing, so maybe you want to comment on this as well, Chris. Either or, because I don't know too much about that there.
Well, I'll save everybody some time here, but I don't have a lot of insight here, so apologies, but just wasn't involved in that.
Okay, and also maybe a broader thing. I mean, in the thinking in a decentralized fashion, so we shouldn't have to wait for a specific entity to move or to do something. We should be able to, the indexers should be able to come together and make it happen and have Base or any other chain that we feel supported. We should be able to do something about it. I think there's maybe some gatekeepers still. And when we think about the various oracles that are very centralized, or studio that is also very centralized, but maybe we should at least be able to kick off the effort from the indexer side.
Chris just commented something interesting. I'm very curious if you can share more information on that. Chris, that'd be awesome.
I'm thinking that we are probably waiting for things to calm down after the MIPS program, though, because everyone had to rush to put together infrastructure during that time, and yeah, maybe people are shuffling back and forth for now until that governance piece is up.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Vince, that's council governance. Yeah.
I see. I see. Yeah, I'm not sure who's assigned to this, but I can. Oh, Pedro from the foundation. Okay. Well, I will message him about this and try to get an update on that and share with the community as soon as I hear back. So, yeah, I'll make a note of that now and be sure to.
I can provide some update on that part. So, with respect to base and the questions that 𝗨𝗀𝗃 is asking, which are incredibly important questions, I don't have any insight there. On the GIP related to the new process for how chains will be added to the ecosystem is super close. And there's a lot of moving parts here. And I anticipate seeing something soon. When is soon? I know everybody wants timelines, and I respect that as well. But out of respect for other people's work, I can't put a date on it. But it's soon. And yes, Pedro is writing that GIP.
Gotcha. Thanks so much for the update. We'll hopefully hear back from that soon, as you say. Alrighty. Do we have any insight on how much? What do you mean? Wait. So, do we have any insight on how much of that punch list can be spearheaded by indexes rather than core devs?
Presumably, whenever we want to add a new network, it'll need to meet certain requirements for node support and this, that, and the other thing. Do we have any insight on how much of that could be done just from within the indexer community versus how much of it needs to be done from a core developer point of view?
I don't have kind of specific knowledge of the GIP, so I'm in the same light as you, but I would presume that the GIP lays out a process that any indexer or indeed any participant should be able to follow to propose chain additions. And I definitely don't expect core devs to be a dependency in that process.
All right. Well, yeah, hopefully we can get some more updates on that very shortly. Just responding to your comment there, Derek, random item Vince and I were discussing today, how regularly your index is syncing random. Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is a question for the indexer community. So how regularly are indexers syncing random hashes while helping builders and potentially forgetting about them causing DB bloat? Yeah, curious to hear people's thoughts on that.
I'm usually once every month I clear off the database, like literally making a list from network subgraphs that have signal above a certain threshold, and Grafman dumping everything else. Sorry, Grafman dropping everything else. It's like basically any time the database goes over 20 terabytes. Grafman dump actually dumps the subgraph into a file, a CSV file, or not, the SQL file. It's actually a command though. It's funny.
Alrighty, any additional comments on that topic there?
Oh yeah, gateway bingo. So I was chatting with POps guys. They have the same kind of like system architecture, same in Hetzner in Germany. They serve 5 times more requests per second than I do, and we're basically sitting one next to the other. They have lower stake than I do. I allocate to way more subgraphs than what they do. So this definitely feels like gateway bingo to me, and it has been feeling like this ever since I joined the ecosystem, though. To answer your question there, State Machine.
I think that's a phenomenon that we've been observing for like since the very beginning, and that's right. But I don't know if you guys are paying attention to the QoS subgraph, because there's a lot of data in there, and very often I see odd behavior in the volume of data, and I would say half the time I'm able to find the reason looking at the QoS subgraph. Doesn't explain everything. There's a lot of unknown stuff that are still happening in the big black box that is the edge and node gateway. But the QoS subgraph is a great source of information.
It is indeed, and we are working on a dashboard there to visualize some of that information. And we'll hopefully be able to share more about that very soon.
But it doesn't explain everything, and yeah, sometimes I'd like to be able to speak to someone that has a better knowledge of the gateway. They could explain to me, okay, what's happening, or okay, well, your indexer isn't getting traffic because you had like a lot of error rate, and you're there's some penalty mechanism against you for now. It's going to expire. I don't know, there might be different reasons. We don't know how this black box is working. I think now we begin to have a little more contact or information with the edge and node. We have Mikita on the call here. Hopefully one day she'll be able to bring us more information about the gateway, or if we have a specific issue, okay, why my indexer isn't getting any traffic. Miki, could you take a look? Could you help me here? but I understand that they don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time and resources to handle every individual questions we could have.
Something that Chris mentioned is to have Theo from 𝗨𝗀𝗧𝗪 to talk about the gateway. That's something we can certainly do. And so hopefully that could be a good way of bringing about more transparency and enlightening folks on the gateway. So I will note that down for future reference. Yes, Mickey's just asked, Mickey from 𝗨𝗪𝗧𝗪 has asked the question, are there any specific questions as it relates to transparency on gateway ops that folks have, so we can get those answered for you? There seems to be one here, Mickey, asking about US indexes versus European indexes in relation to MIPS scores.
What was that?
So there was a question there from Vince looking for more clarity on why US-based indexers perform poorly on MIPS scores as compared to their European counterparts, or just some sort of kind of enlightenment there.
I remember this topic coming up, and I know that Pedro had addressed this. I'll try to find that post. Vince, do you remember that post? Or maybe you didn't see it, or maybe you did see it and it wasn't sufficient. But I am familiar with this geography question, and I felt like it was addressed. But
yes, it definitely was. I do remember seeing an announcement regarding fixing traffic, because it was first of all only coming from Europe at some point, and then it was fixed, and then it was coming from all the places near the gateways, basically. So it should have been fixed. And it was taken into consideration accordingly, so I'm not sure if there's anything else to look into that, though. But yeah, speaking of gateways, I'm definitely looking forward to understanding the ISA a little bit better. That's for sure, Chris.
All right. Well, we can definitely facilitate a conversation there because it sounds like it would be universally helpful. Mickey has kindly offered to tag her in the Indexer channel if you have any additional questions as it relates to there. And what I can do is maybe coordinate with her and see if if there are sufficient questions there that we can get answered for you in a future IOH episode dedicated to the gateway stuff.
It would be nice if we can get Theo on board the IOH session. Maybe 30 minutes would be nice, maybe even less, but at least get him to hear our questions and maybe find a way to answer them. Because I think Theo is more or less the only one that can answer all the questions that we have.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and it's definitely within the realm of possibility. We can certainly get Theo on board, and so yeah, I will. I've already noted that down, and I will try and get a date sorted for that. But yeah, that's good to hear. It's good to hear. I mean, that's kind of why we have these conversations, so we can get your questions answered. So it seems like there's a lot of demand for this episode. So I will work hard to make sure it happens. All right. Seems like Vince has followed up there, and Nick will inform Pedro. Great. That's good to see. We are in the final minute of today's conversation. Are there any final topics, thoughts that people want to share? Of course, as always, we can always stick around and vibe after the hour. It's never a final stop. But if there's anything that people want to talk about in the final recorded section, fire away.
I guess that's a no. Oh,
Yeah,
there's Mickey typing in the chat. Oh, there you go.
Oh,
That was
thank
it then.
All right. Thank you so much, Mickey. Appreciate the kind words. Yeah, well, there you go. I will take this opportunity to wrap up the official IOH conversation. As always, I don't know about that one, but I appreciate the vote of confidence. As always, folks are welcome to stick around and vibe. That's always the case. But as it relates to the official IOH, thank you all for attending. We very much appreciate each and every one of you for showing up, and we look forward to hosting you again next week. We have, if you remember last week, we discussed Playground Analytics, and we will have the CEO of Playground Analytics next week talking about his project. If any of you are interested in that, so please do show up next week for that episode. Thank you all, and we look forward to seeing you all again next week. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, y'all. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.